Well, we're going to have a cold open right now, not a cold open. And the reason for that is on Tuesday, which is the day we were recording this for Wednesday release, we had actually gotten in touch with Cole Burgess to see how things are going for him. Knowing we had a 53-man roster day on Tuesday. And he had told me at that point that he had met with his head coach. They waived him, planned those for him to come back Wednesday morning at 11:30 and sign to come back to the practice squad. And which I told him, hey, it ain't over, so don't lose hope. And he said, definitely not. You should know me enough by now to know that I got a vision, and practice squad is all part of the plan. And you know what? When you look at the specialist category in D3 players trying to get to the pros, it's been tough sledding for D3 specialists to get there lately. You know, the Pierre Garçons of the world have not been developing as much. So for Cole to get onto that practice squad is actually a real leap of faith and a special thing. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we saw, J.J. Lapp get released by the Rams. I believe the player from Randolph-Macon who had a chance with the Patriots was also released. So, I mean, the chances of even making it to a 53-man roster, even if you're from a Power, 5 SEC school, are extremely slim. And I don't know about you, Frank, but I certainly did not make the kind of salary that a practice squad player does my first year out of college. So it's a nice amount of money. It keeps you, in football shape. It gives you the opportunity for a next man up type of situation, because you never know what's going to happen during the course of what is now an 18-game NFL season. So, that's really great news for Cole. Just the fact that he's still in the running there in the NFL says a lot about him and his ability. And hopefully he just keeps his head down, does his job, and he'll get his chance eventually.
David Wallace was the Randolph-Macon player I think you were talking about. Justin Blazek obviously was with the Bengals for a little bit. That didn't pan out either for him, I don't believe. So, more or less, Cole's probably the best of the batch right now that we've seen at least. Maybe there's somebody we're missing out there. I'm sure you'll let us know who that is. But, good for you, Cole. Stay positive out there, and we'll see where it goes. You got to think that Joe Burrow must have liked throwing to him enough that they, liked the idea of keeping him around for practice squad purposes. Who knows? But hey, You're still in the ball game. That's for damn sure. So, hey, it's Region 1, Region 2 time. It's preseason show number 2. So let's go here. You are watching season 17 of In the Huddle. And so, as I said before during our cold open, we're going to be doing regions 1 and 2 here. But before we get there there was some news breaking on Tuesday even further. I mean, good thing we don't record these things until the last possible minute, not necessarily intentionally all the time.
Why do we want to...
Yep. So a team that's currently in Region 1 is going to end up in a conference in Region 2 or 3, depending on what the NCAA decides to do with the landmark. And that is WestCon. The Wolves now are going to be moving to the landmark conference, which is a distance from the rest of the competition in the landmark. This goes back to the entire MASCAC debacle, I would call it. How's that?
Debacle, God. It's a MASCAC thing, dude. Come on.
Yeah, well, there were 2 teams that kind of were left out to dry, Castleton being one, WestCon being the other. WestCon's found a home. I don't know what's going to happen to Castleton at this point after this season. God bless them. I'm trying to find a home at this point. This is not going to be easy for them in 2025. But WestCon is in there. Keystone's still alive, so the landmark is growing here, that means, so at least for football purposes. Yeah. So we'll see what that all means. I mean, what do you think it adds in terms of WestCon going to the landmark?
Well, it does expand the geography kind of out of the Pennsylvania, heartland there to southwestern Connecticut, which, they can recruit out of New York City, which, I think a lot of those schools already do anyway. I think it'll just be, it's a safer haven for the Wolves to kind of continue to build their program. Folks that are our age will remember they used to be with the NJAC, and so they definitely played up to some of those tougher New Jersey and other types of schools. So WestCon has the recruiting base and the location. I think that it can hang around and be competitive in that league.
Speaking of hanging around, they hung around Johns Hopkins in that first half of the first round playoff game last year for a little bit longer than we had assumed. There was a little bit of a shootout going on early on in that game. Then obviously Hopkins controlled the rest of that game. So, it's long ago and far away. It feels like it's less than 8 months ago we were talking about at this point, or 9 months ago, I guess. Yeah. But nonetheless, we talked a lot in our first preseason show. This show is going to concentrate on player interviews. We're going to talk about some key games in each region and focus on some key teams that we see, but we've already been through our top 25. We wanted to hear from the players this go around. And JB's going to catch me as I forget some of our interviews here. We've done so many interviews over the last few days, or let's say the last week or so.
Or maybe a dozen. Well, yeah, I think 10 or 11. I'd have to look at the list. It's been a lot, and we still have one more that we're going to be recording, I think, on Thursday with a Region 6 student athlete. So, yeah, it's been a lot. But this, like we said from our get-go, this is a show we like to focus on the players and the student athletes who really make Division III. And so that's what we're here to do.
And some great interviews at that from schools that we haven't otherwise spoken with that much in the past. And you'll enjoy, I think, some of these interviews that'll be coming up. We tried to get Clayton Marangi from Endicott. It was our schedules that got in the way more than anything on their end. We apologize for that. I am sure we're going to hear from him before this season is over. So not just on crunch time from the highlights, but also his voice on our broadcast here at some point in time. So Clayton, thanks for trying for us. And Sean Medeiros out in Endicott land, thanks for trying and working with us on that as well. So having said all that, let's go to our key Region 1 games that are coming up. And, a lot of these are crossovers because of different scheduling. We're in the out-of-conference season for most out there. And we're going to start things off on Thursday at 7 p.m. That's not the first game in the country, obviously. But Rowan versus Stevenson. Very interesting game. One that either team could win. New head coach for Rowan. Who knows what to expect there. That's going to be a big one. For me, personally, it's an interesting batch here in terms of who's going to be our top game. You have the pinch and saw game, and I am prone to agree with you on the pinch and saw game on the top game of the week for Region 1. What are your thoughts as we look at some of these games here?
Well, I think in Region 1, you have sort of the MAC and then you have the New England schools, right? And we get the NESCAC starting up in week 2. So we're going to see a kind of a variety of different things. Now the ECFC is down to 4 or 5 teams, but they're still grandfathered into a playoff berth. So those games you still have to pay attention to because they're going to end up in the 40-team playoff field. But yeah, there's some great regional rivalries. There's some great trophy games that we get to later on in the season, particularly when you think about the Merchant Marine and the Coast Guard and the Secretary's Cup. You got Norwich and the Coast Guard for the Mug. There's some really great rivalry games up in the Northeast that Region 1 really gets featured in.
Yeah, we'll be kind of doing a scroll of big games coming up for the rest of the season, just focusing right now on Week 1 games. And Region 2, it's interesting because there is the first game in the nation at a home site in Region 2. And that's going to be the 5 p.m. Eastern Time game of Lacrosse versus RPI. That is the first kickoff. We are working to get our live pregame show together there and postgame show from RPI with JB joining me in Troy. So a huge game coming up there. That's going to be my game of the week there. JB picked a game I'll be attending Saturday the 7th, which is Hopkins versus Ithaca, which was a thriller last year. I did attend that down in Baltimore last year. That's an interesting game in terms of new head coach for Hopkins, new-ish quarterback for Ithaca, and will they continue to roll toward the Liberty League crown this season? They were picked number one in the Liberty League by the coaches in their coaches poll. So we'll see what happens here. But RPI lacrosse, we talked about in our first preseason show, something I'm interested to see because of the change in cast at lacrosse and some of who's being brought back for RPI ultimately here.
Yeah, and on paper this looks like a mismatch because you've got the number 6 team in the country in lacrosse, coming to an unranked team in upstate New York. But if you read the Liberty League preseason coaches poll news release, this RPI team brings back, I think, 10 starters on offense and most of its defense. So this is an experienced team. They're playing at home at a night, sort of early evening game. It'll be new territory for the Eagles. It's a kind of a half cross-country trip, so that's going to be a really exciting way to kick off the season. I also like in Region 2 the Union versus Utica game on Friday night. There's going to be some greens and some Moose Hogans in the stands, and it's John Drock's debut as the head coach of the Garnet Chargers. Dutchman, And then also that Friday night, Hobart plays Alfred. You've got in Region 1, one of the games that I think is going to be pretty good, Frank, will be Framingham against Husson up in Maine. Those are two strong Region 1 programs that are facing off in Week 1. And then, I think as far as Week 1 goes, those are the ones that kind of stand out to me, and we'll kind of see how things shake out for the rest of the September.
So earlier in this discussion, we talked about Johns Hopkins Ithaca, the game that I will be attending, and we had the pleasure to speak with a Johns Hopkins player. So let's kind of go toward that interview right now. Cole Peters was our interview, and Cole, somebody that I didn't know much about heading into the interview, to be honest with you. Obviously, we have an inextricable relationship now after that whole Muhlenberg situation. We talk about that in this interview. But, Cole, talking about the defense a little bit and, the excitement that they have right now with their new head coach, who's much younger than both of us, which just makes us feel really old. It's an interesting discussion, and here is our interview with Cole Peters of Hopkins. Cole, thanks for joining us. And let me just say, it's been an interesting last 12 months for the Hopkins program. Let's not kid ourselves. From the Will Leger magic in Muhlenberg to, the playoffs to losing Coach Camara and, having Coach Wodica now being the head coach. I mean, where do you even start if you're us here with questions? But I'm going to start with just the overall idea that you have a 32-year-old head coach, I think he is, or give or take, in that zone, making me feel really old. But he was your linebackers coach going into last year or during last year. Tell us about the transition. Tell us about what's different there and what we should expect to be different in Johns Hopkins this season.
I wouldn't expect there to be a lot different, honestly. I mean, Coach Wads is also a Hopkins guy, and when Coach Camara told us that he was leaving, it felt like we just didn't skip a beat because it was so obvious to us that Coach Wads was going to step into that role. And we knew that he would do just as well as he has to this point. We kept rolling. We got veteran guys coming back, a lot of experience. So I would expect there to be, a few changes here and there, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot of the same Hopkins football that you know.
Yeah, it's a pretty good football team you guys got there in Baltimore. Cole, one of the things that I noticed when I was looking you up to book this interview is that you had a number change this season, and you're going into your senior year as number 3, which has a special significance. Speaking of Hopkins coaches, can you tell the people out there what is the story behind the number 3, and what an honor it is to be basically given that or elected to wear that number by your teammates?
Yes, sir. So Coach Margraf really built Hopkins football into what it is today. And this was the number that he wore when he was playing here at Hopkins. So since his passing and Coach Kamara's takeover, we have voted for the player who's going to wear number 3. Started with Ross Anderson and then Spencer Ugla most recently, and now me. So, as far as speaking to what an honor it is, Coach Margraf has, again, built this thing that I'm a part of, and I never knew him, but it's become such a special and important thing to me in my life. So to be able to honor him is obviously a great, I guess, honor, but blessing really. And then for me, it's become Spencer and Ross. Like those are the 2 guys who I knew wearing the number. That's what symbolizes Hopkins football to me. And those are 2 guys that I have the most respect for, totally admire. And if I can be what those guys were to this program, then, I'm happy to be in that role.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better myself, having met Coach Margraf and interviewed him and everything else, and then being shocked by the loss of him. The traditional legacy are alive and well at Hopkins, thanks to guys like you and Coach Kamara for this season, but he still bleeds blue through and through where he is now. Listen, there's like this weird bond that has formed over the last year with people that were in Muhlenberg for what happened, okay? Let's talk about razor-thin scenarios about who goes to the playoffs and who doesn't. And, I mean, if Will Leger doesn't do what he does and turns the corner with the ball and hits the end zone, who knows what would have happened in overtime in that situation. It was. But, I'm friends with the ref crew of that game as a result of this. I've got a, Blue Jays bar hat and everything to go with this whole thing. It's kind of like just one of those moments that frozen in time, ESPN coverage and everything else. I mean, Cole, do you realize how freaking close you guys were to not making the playoffs as a result of possibly a ball bouncing a different way in that game? Yeah. And, I mean, do you learn to maybe not take anything for granted when it comes to a new season like 2024 here because of something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we learned that. That was a lesson we learned from the Susquehanna game. We missed a few extra points and had all that crazy stuff happen. So to us, like, that was already where we were at. We knew it was going to be razor thin. And, for Muhlenberg to not make the playoffs, that's a great football team not in the playoffs. And it, again, very easily could have been us. And it wasn't just a Muhlenberg game. Looking back at our season, we were in a bunch of gritty games. CNU, good team. Ithaca, good team. F&M, close game. Dickinson, close game. Also good teams. So for us, we just never flinched in those moments. There was never a doubt on our sideline, no panic. And we're going to roll that into this year. So I fully expect to be in gritty games again. We know, we play a really great schedule. We're going to run into good teams. They're going to play us close. So we just got to keep making plays like that, making magic happen,
Making magic happen, is that in the name of one of the songs that your band plays? Because we understand from our friend Ernie over there that you actually have some other talents besides playing football. I'm in a band myself. I've been playing rock and roll for fun for over 30 years now, maybe even longer.
Love it.
Tell us a little bit about this little side project that you do when you're not tackling people and sacking quarterbacks.
Yeah, the Bows. We started up about a year ago. It was me, Joe Zahner, our kicker, and then a few other Hopkins students. And we just, play gigs around Hopkins, frat basements, the like. It's been a great time. We have fun. Hopkins football rolls strong to the Bows concerts. So we have some fun out there. It's been a good thing.
It's if like you got like free security, right? You got these linemen, D linemen. No one's going to mess around with you guys with the little extra protection there, right?
Yeah, 100%. No one's breaking through.
Okay, back to football. We could ask you about the facial hair that you're rocking, which is quite quality, I will say. But we're going to ask you. We got a big game coming up in Week 1 that I probably will be attending again this year because it's going to have implications from minute 1 of the season. Great weekend 1 that we're going to have from Thursday, Friday, and Saturday games, and you guys are going to kind of be the end of the party for me that weekend with at Ithaca for Hopkins. new quarterback, you're going to key in on Colin Shum, new insofar as for you guys, but he did get some quality starts last year and looked good in those starts. And there's some controversy about Ithaca not being ranked in our listing, and others just not giving much credit or credence to who they are, and that seems to be a way to really wake them up. And so we apologize if that adversely affects the situation for you guys. But the reality is it'll be an interesting season for them. But let's look at that game. What do you look to in that game, which was a very touch and go game last year at your place, and playing at Butterfield? How's that going to feel for you guys to start things out that way?
I think it'll be fun to start out with a road trip, head up to New York before classes get too busy and everything, better than doing that later in the season, I suppose. And as far as the game plan, we know we're taking on a good football team. If they had thrown the other QB in mid-game, we would have, it wouldn't have changed how we approach the game, I suppose. We know they're a good team. We're going to prepare for them hard, and we're going to be ready to go. We had a great spring ball. We're having a great fall camp. It's a really veteran group. I know that we're losing very good players, Luke Sherman, J.R. Woods, but, we've got dogs coming back. We've got dudes who are going to make those strides kind of the way that regular players do who aren't freaks like J.R. and Sherman, So I think we're going to bring a really good football team up into Ithaca, and we're going to play a good game. It's going to be fun.
JB, if I may, I just want to follow up on that. There's no hard feelings with Luke leaving, right? I mean, this guy goes over to UCLA for grad school and is going to have an awesome opportunity, whether or not he hits the field. Obviously a big loss, but I mean, how's he doing? Do you guys stay in touch?
Yeah, he's doing well. It sounds like he's, making an impact over there, hopefully moving up the depth chart. We're hoping he gets to see the field and play, ball out, do what he was doing here, there. And we've got all the confidence in the world in him. Excited to see what he does there. And yeah, absolutely no hard feelings. So we've got great players replacing him. There were dudes filling in for him all last year. And, if Luke Sherman wasn't Luke Sherman, he wouldn't have noticed that we had a 2 in there or 3 in there. We've got good players all the way down. So we'll be ready to go.
Well, I normally don't call out specific players, but this one hits a little close to home. But speaking of transfers, Connor Gunn, who was a senior at Hobart, has transferred over to Hopkins. He's a defensive line player. I mean, how is he adjusting to life at Homewood so far for you guys?
He fit right in. I feel like we always get these grad transfers who come in and they plug right into the program. And Connor Gunn is totally one of those guys. He's doing well, learning the defense. I expect him to contribute and help out with this team. So it's been fun having him.
Yeah, I mean, the national roster that you guys have, you're right, there is this plug-and-play mentality, obviously. I remember Andrew Sheehan, transferred from Union into your program, became an easy fit in terms of his personality and attitude on the field. So I've seen it for myself. It's really amazing how you guys have this national roster, and it lends to what your success level is year in and year out. But let me ask you the question, okay, is winning a Centennial the end-all be-all? What is the goal here, especially after watching what Cortland was able to do last season? What is the ultimate goal for the Blue Jays in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, it's a national championship. It's always been a national championship. We talked about razor close games. We could have gone to the semifinal last year. We were a very close field goal away, a lot of close plays in that really good Randy Mack game. So we know we can play with anyone, we can hang with anyone, and we're gonna again just prepare for every week, go after it, get it, and hopefully make some magic happen all the way to the national title.
JB, something about me hanging out at Hopkins games and field goals that really became an interesting plus and minus. I'm wondering if I'm going to be asked not to go to the game to open the season here, but I'll let JB hit the next one here.
Is there now I wonder if there's now a drink at the Blue Jay bar called the Rossi. I don't know. I mean, there's a little shaking.
I think it was a stipulation with the bucket hat that you got that you had to hang it up in the back from Mr. Spivak there.
We will resolve this.
It's around here somewhere. It's in
it is actually I have to. I cleaned up the place a little bit, believe it or not, and I forgot to grab it back. One of those spring cleaning things we have to do around here after a fun football season. JB, I think we're at that point where we need to.
Ahead,
Yep. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to sort of step
No, you
back
go
and
for
I'm
it.
looking at your guys' schedule, and it's interesting. Obviously the big game in Ithaca in week 1, that's going to have national attention. But, you guys are also playing some other teams, at Christopher Newport. They made the playoffs, Salisbury and Rowan, a couple of strong NJAC teams. And then you get into the meat of the Centennial schedule, and I know a lot of people think of Homewood as a lacrosse stadium because they see it on ESPN, but it's really a great football environment. And you guys somehow, through the scheduling gods, get Franklin and Marshall, Muhlenberg and Dickinson all at home. This season is a big benefit, I would think, right?
Yeah, I mean, those were all away games last year, and they were all close. Down, not down against Muhlenberg, but had to battle against Franklin Marshall, Dickinson, and Muhlenberg there. So we've talked about it in the past. We think it's kind of funny how big of a deal home field seems to make in the Centennial. We went to Ursinus, and what was not that close of a game the year before was very close when we played at their place in 22. And then we played at Muhlenberg my freshman year and lost there, then came back and won. So home field definitely makes a difference. We're lucky to have those 3 games at Homewood. And it'll be a fun time having, I get to have my folks out, have them at home, and then play a good football game, hopefully walk away with a win. So it'll be good.
But Cole, don't you know that they now mark you down on home games versus away games in the committee?
Oh, yeah, really?
I mean, this formula is just spectacular. Go watch our first preseason show. We'll explain everything to you that just got posted literally as we begin recording this. But you'll see, you probably have seen it by that point. This one airs. But nonetheless, Cole, like I said, I will see you guys on that Saturday to start the season, September 7th, and safe travels up. But we want to give you the opportunity, as always, for any shout-outs to family, friends, teammates, anybody that might be watching. Cole Peters, the floor is yours for shout-outs.
Shoot, I didn't know that we'd get to this point. I got to think. Guess I'll shout out running backs coach Hoffman stepping in, filling a void. He's a student assistant coach. He'll, I don't know, probably appreciate that, maybe not. And I'll shout out, I guess that's it, just Coach Hoffman.
Wow, no family, no
Shout
friends,
out
just
band,
Coach
maybe?
Hoffman.
Mom, if you're watching this, I love you. I'm sorry about the mustache. She hates it. It's in all of my social media photos. I'll clean it up once we get back into ROTC stuff here. Thank
you for doing that.
Dad, family.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys, love you all. Yeah. It'll be good.
Why the mustache? Go ahead. Explain the mustache. If Mom hates it so much, why are you keeping it?
Yeah. Well, I'm an Army ROTC cadet, so I got to be in regs a lot of the time, and I'm supposed to have it in the corners of my lips here, but it doesn't look, like quite such a mustache when I do that. So I've been out of I went to Fort Knox for a while this summer, and then I've had 6 weeks off or so. So I've just been growing it since then. While I can. Hopefully my cadre isn't watching this video or come across it later. I'm sure they'd see a picture of the stash at one point or another, but I guess I'm not being a good role model to the younger cadets, but got to grow it out every once in a while when you can.
Well, listen, you went to Fort Knox, so that means that Cole Peters is golden on the field and off the field. We're going to go with that, and we will see you in Ithaca at Butterfield September 7th for what will be a great game. Best of luck to you all season long, Cole, and to the Blue Jays.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Gotta love that he's in a band, Frank. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, looking ahead at that game a little bit more, I guess the question becomes, does the change in leadership matter? I mean, Greg Camara, great head coach, obviously, for them after Jim Margraf passes away. They needed the stability, I think, with that situation, and kudos to them for that. But, it's a change at the top, and we've seen a few of these throughout the country coming up here. What's your takeaway from this whole discussion?
Well, I think once again this is a internal promotion. I believe the the new head coach was the former defensive coordinator. Now, I know that there is a national talk show host that likes to say that defensive coaches are not good to have, but I mean, maybe that's in the pro game when you're supposed to be scoring lots of touchdowns. You can win with defense in D3. So I think that keeps the continuity. Obviously, the student athletes know him. He recruited probably a lot of the guys like Cole and others. So I think that continuity is a pretty common theme that we see in the D3 ranks, and I think Coach will probably just do a very fine job. I mean, Hopkins is going to be one of the teams to beat coming out of Region 2, and they're ranked in the top 10 for a reason.
We'll see where that goes. And again, looking forward to the big game in Ithaca coming up. Let's roll back for a second to Region 1. And we talked a little bit about the pinch and saw game that was on your highlights. So, thanks to Brian McGoffin, who helped us out with this following interview. Aiden Lewin we talked to. And why don't you tell folks a little bit about Aiden?
Well, I didn't initially think this would be the case, Frank, when I was looking for a player from Springfield, that they would happen to be from where I live in Orlando, Florida. But that's the case with Aiden. He attended Timber Creek High School, which is about 20 minutes from where I live. I've seen my kids play in their high school gym. It's a great public school here in the Orlando area, and we found out a little bit about him and his travels up to Massachusetts and what he has in store, or at least what the Pride hopefully has in store for 2024.
Aiden, thanks for joining us. And NEWMAC defending champs. How does that sound? And kind of take us through, last year, obviously you win. You get stifled by Ithaca in that playoff game, 21-7. Take us through what you learned in that process as well. That's going to help you guys rearm here for 2024.
For sure. I mean, definitely super fortunate to be in the position to, win a lot of football games last year, go 9-1, and then run into Ithaca. And honestly, what we can take away from that is that, we're just this close. We want to close that gap. Coach C and, Coach Lewin and Coach Keen are saying it all the time. So we're looking inside of ourselves as players into our team, dynamic, and trying to build this thing so that we could close that gap and, take it to those teams that are top 25 plus programs in the nation.
Yeah, and I remember watching that game, Aiden, and really, if it wasn't for like one broken play in the first quarter, I mean, you guys did hold Ithaca to like 3 or 4 3 and outs going into the halftime. It just seemed like, for some reason things just couldn't get going enough on offense, but your defense has played really strong the whole time. I know the Pride gets a lot of credit for the triple option and all that, but as a defensive player, when you look back on the tape, because there were a couple of games last season where it looked like the big plays, got you guys. Has that been a focus in camp, or is it just we're going to run our system and sort of take it an opponent at a time?
I mean, definitely. We're trying to crack down on those explosives, 20-plus yard plays. We can't let them happen. But at the end of the day, the schematics are going to be for themselves, but we got to control ourselves, attitude and effort, running the ball, play our 1/11th. And if we do that, we'll find our way and be able to stop that all happening and, again, close that gap.
Aiden, how important do you feel out-of-conference games are for you guys? Because you gave up, I think, 34 points versus Union in that Friday night game I attended last year and didn't lose another regular season game after that. You went 7-0 to run the table in the NEWMAC after that point and never gave up 30-plus in the rest of the season that I remember, or whatever number of points it ended up being. But it was a tough game. I remember that much. Kind of drive us through what you gain from out-of-conference experience, especially now that we're redesigning things for the playoffs and whatnot, and teams may have a different opinion or approach with out-of-conference scheduling going forward here.
I mean, yeah, out-of-conference games I think are huge. They're an opportunity to go play teams that, potentially we don't play every year and, play some of the best teams in the country. Union, they give us a run every single year, and they're a great program. And I think, those games teach you a lot about your team going into conference play. I think, playing those 3 or 4 games depending on the team teaches you a lot and, gives a chance for coaches to reevaluate and for leaders on the team to reevaluate and kind of push what our standard is and what we're going to do to not only compete in the NUMAC but nationally.
Yeah, and I'm looking over here on the side. I got my little cheat sheet, Frank. 21 points was the most that they allowed for the rest of the season. After that point, Salve, who they beat 31-21, and then obviously the playoff game. Aiden, has there been any talk in preseason camp, with the expanded playoffs, that there could be? I mean, you guys are still trying to control your destiny. You have not lost a NUMAC game in your career. I think your whole senior or graduate school class has that winning record. But is there any talk about, hey, like maybe this is the year that we do something and we go a little further than ever?
Of course, there's whispers in the locker room about how good we can be, but at the end of the day, we all know we need to be where our feet are right now and worry about this rep this day and then tomorrow, and eventually we'll get to week 1. But for now, we know how good we can be, but we want to worry about, camp and get everything down packed right now for sure.
So Aiden, rumor has it here, if my knowledge is right from the guy downstairs here below me, that you are a graduate student technically, or 5th year, however you want to look at it. And so, that means that you made a choice to come back. You didn't necessarily have to come back this season to play again. Why? And how many others like you have made that decision this year for the Pride?
For me personally, it comes down to 2 things. Football's been a part of my life since I was 5 years old. I love this game like nothing else, and I couldn't step away just yet. And then the second thing, and the bigger thing for me, is the people in this program, not just the football team, but walking around the halls at school, guys like Brian McGoffin and, Coach C, Coach Lou, Coach Keen, and then every single person that I play with, they're pretty much my why. They're why it's easy to wake up in the morning and go to camp practices and, do the extra stuff. So walking away wasn't even a thought in my head. Every chance I get to play football, I'm taking it, especially with these guys. We got a lot of dudes out here.
Well, it looks like you're taking advantage of some other opportunities, Aiden. Our sports information guy, Brian, over there, tipped us off that you represented the Pride at both the NCAA Career and Sports Forum and the Immersion Program. What were those all about, and how did you get interested and or selected for that?
So I'll talk about the Immersion Program first. It's about 50 student athletes, Division III level, from all different, ethnical backgrounds, trying to, build diversity in sport, but not through, what people are now calling like DI hires, but, be the top of the top and get people that, look a little different, look like me, in top spots in sports. That was awesome. I've made some of my best friends, in the world right now are from that program. And then the Korean Sports Forum kind of was an opportunity that branched off of that. Definitely was awesome. That one's like 250 through all divisions. And, I want to coach football one day. So easy decision to go there, and, super fortunate to be able to represent this great school and meet so many other like-minded people and, build a network for myself.
Aiden, tell me about the importance to you of the Roaches.
The Roach. That's a awesome group of guys. They're obviously, everyone knows that, football's played in the trenches, and without those guys, we wouldn't be able to do a lot. And outside of the football thing, like, they're a huge part of our culture in this program. They have their own little weird, things that they got going on and traditions, but we love every one of them. And, when it's time to compete, we definitely go head to head. And, I love the energy that they bring. Guys like Kevin Lind and, Travis Gause, Grady Roman, they definitely lead that group. And I'm excited to see what they do this year.
Absolutely. Well, I guess speaking of bugs, we happen to be from the same hometown here, Orlando, Florida. I know you attended Timber Creek High School. I've been over there, watched one of my kids play volleyball. I do have a couple of kids that also go to college in Massachusetts, so I've done that, JetBlue trip up to Hartford a bunch of times. I'm doing it again a couple of times this next couple of weeks. How did Springfield get on your radar as a kid down here in Orlando? It is sort of far away in some respects, but what have you learned from that experience and taken from it?
I get to give all thanks to Coach Lou. Still don't really fully know how he found me, but thankful that he did. He sold this program to me, and then I was able to talk to a kid named Jeremy Lipsky, who was a senior at the time, and he really pushed home because of COVID. I wasn't able to visit, so he pushed home how impactful this program was for him and how awesome this school was. Now leaving home and going across the country to go to school at first seemed scary, but people here brought me in right away, whether it was football or teachers or just other classmates. I'm super thankful for that, and I feel like it's helped me grow as a man, just to be able to get away from mommy and daddy a little bit and be able to teach myself some things and be a grown up at the end of the day.
Well, Jeremy Lipsky, his family still watches the show. I want you to know. So also, Nick Boehner of the same, let's say mindset back in the old days of Springfield Pride football, video bombing everything I would do, but we won't go there. Don't take their lessons if I show up at one of your games, okay, please. But nonetheless, Aiden, what I'd like to do at this point is offer you the opportunity. We're probably going to run this the first show we do, so you'll be the first official interview we air as well for our 2024 season. So, set the standard here this season for us with the shout-outs to any family, friends, teammates, coaches, friends, or whatever you want. The floor is always yours. Aiden, Lewin, shout-outs.
Definitely. First, I want to thank both of you. I know you guys have a lot going on in life, and you still are able to, put together this great show, which we appreciate. It's definitely great content. I'm watching all the time. I want to shout out my mom and my dad, my brothers and my sisters. I got a lot of them. My girlfriend Gabby, and then I want to give a special shout out to the guys in the Wolf Pack, and then defensive captains Joe Maurer, Will McKay, and Billy Carr. We wouldn't be a team, and we wouldn't be able to be the way we are without them. So, shout out to those guys. Shout out to everyone.
Does Gabby live in the Massachusetts area or down in the Florida area or somewhere in between?
She goes here, so she's a Long Island girl. So Strong Island, and some Florida boy. That's the connection. But yeah, she goes to Springfield.
So she's going to be the reason you have to endure more winters down the line. Is that what's going to happen here? Because I'm sure that was a little bit of a culture shock when you come from Orlando to have the Springfield winter upon you.
Yeah, she definitely will be keeping me around, up here a little bit, and the weather doesn't get easier every year, but we get tougher. That's what that is.
That's right.
A shout out to Brian McGoffin from us, as you brought up and JB had brought up earlier. Brian is one of the best SIDs in the business in Division III especially, and so thanks to everybody over there. We appreciate Springfield, and usually at least once a year I get myself over there, or at least one of your games, so I will see you guys at some point. The Pinch and Saw, I believe, is up first for you guys on the 6th of September, if I remember correctly, or thereabouts. So
Friday
good
Night
luck
Lights,
on
yeah.
that. And we will see you soon.
Can't wait to see you.
Thanks again, Aiden Lewin, for joining us. And again, Brian McGoffin, great job helping us get that quality interview done here. And some interesting things to talk about here with respect to Springfield and other schools. But, what's interesting to me is some teams are really playing a lot of non-Saturday games up front this season. RPI is one of them. The the Transit Trophy. Why am I forgetting that? Transit Trophy is going to be on a Friday night. They're playing a Thursday night game, obviously open the season. But Springfield, they open with a Pinch and Saw game, and that's going to be on a Friday night, as we see here. And then week 3, I think it is? Yeah, it's Union versus Springfield, I believe, again on a Friday night at Springfield. So, I don't know how that plays with your rhythm as a team, because normally you're getting prepped with a Saturday-based scheme, and yet now you're going to have a couple Friday, Thursday things, depending on who you are. Did you ever play Friday night games at all in your time? I mean, Hobart didn't have the lights for it back when, did they, back in the 1800s?
No, definitely not. So this whole thing with the lights has probably only happened in the last decade or so. It's more common, I think, in Region 1 and Region 2, at least in September. But after that, you start getting the sundowns and all that a little bit earlier, so it makes sense to keep those noon or 1 o'clock kickoffs. But yeah, it's been nice to see over the last few years, even teams in Region 1 like, WPI and Worcester State, they'll play on a Friday night. Brockport is playing Buff State on Thursday night at 7 p.m., I think. So a little more night games in the early part of the season, which I think is fun.
So let's look now past week one, and we held our interview for our last player that we're going to be talking to here for this reason, because their big game, and their biggest game of the season, we think early on. They're going to have plenty of other big games down the line, don't get me wrong, but we're talking week 3, Cortland versus Susquehanna. And, first, Brockport's got to face Susquehanna in week 2 at Susquehanna. Then Susquehanna turns around to host Cortland the following week, just like last year, except they were on the road last year in those situations. And, you look down the list, Cortland, Utica, week 6. You've got, obviously, the Cortica game in week 11, way later. And, every game's an adventure when you have the bullseye in your back, if you're Cortland here. But as we kind of just scroll down here and look at these different games that are going to be probably affecting things throughout regions 1 and 2, I should say, throughout the season, you really have to focus on the defending national champs and the road they're going to have to go through here to get back to the playoffs, let alone win another national championship. It's not going to be easy, and 2 losses, while they can allow you to still be in the playoffs, I think, in this day and age, even if you don't win the conference, it probably will place you in a week 1 game in the playoffs instead of getting the bye. So you want to run the table as much as you can for obvious reasons, but even more so this year for that. So we talked to Jaden AlfanoStJohn, the running back, prolific running back for Cortland, who was instrumental during their championship run in 2023, and really want to look at last year, this year, and he kind of opened up. I was actually happy he opened up a little bit more with us when we kind of asked him about the place in history / the effect they're having on Division III as a whole by doing what nobody expected them to do last season, which is win that national championship. Jaden, thanks for joining us. Last time I saw you in person, actually I saw you twice in that weekend in person. Once, kind of fleeting as you were coming back from the bus ride and had a grand celebration at Cortland with all the fans that were there to welcome you guys back. But just to be there on the sideline and see the jubilation, to see even going onto the field afterward, you guys, I mean, what's the feeling right now after all that? Have you guys come down from that? Did you kind of have to force yourself to come down from that because it's a new season? I mean, what is your feeling right now as you come back and get ready for this 2024 season as defending national champs?
I mean, honestly, I don't know if there's anything to come down from. Doesn't really feel like I came down from anything. Kind of just feels like we're here to play football, and we're not here to lose games. We're here to win games. So, I don't know. We're all super hungry, and we definitely want to win the whole thing again and win as much as possible. But I wouldn't say there's anything to come down from. It certainly doesn't feel like that.
Well, and I'll say this with a little tongue-in-cheek, I guess, because I noticed that on the D3 football preseason All-American list that you were a third-team wide receiver. So did you decide to change position on us in the offseason, or was that just a typo where they should have put running back? Is there some kind of change of position for you going on here?
No, I'm still playing running back. I'm just whatever the team needs me to do is what I'm going to do. So whatever that means, I'm going to play football, and just whatever position I'm at is going to be what I'm at. So something like that.
It's the way we like it, and I'm sure Coach is the same way. Fitz is just looking for true football players, left, right, and center out there. But let's look back last year for a second here, because obviously it was a weird season the way it developed. Just looking back at it and talk about the fact you were not a 15-0 national champ. You were a 14-1 national champ because of that Susquehanna game. And we look back at it now and we kind of say to ourselves, did Cortland maybe need to lose the game to learn about themselves enough to be ready for what was a very, very up and down or down and up playoff run to a certain degree, where you guys, just stave off elimination twice and then, turn things around in the second half of the Alma game? What did you learn about yourselves in that Susquehanna game, and how do you avoid looking too far ahead to that game replaying in Week 3 this season on September 21st? Besides having jerks like me ask you about it, way too much. I mean, how do you avoid sort of getting overinvested in looking at that game again?
I'll answer the first question. Yeah, I mean that game was good for us. I don't think we necessarily needed to lose that game to figure out what we are and who we are. But I mean, I think that our biggest takeaway from that game was we can't take our foot off the pedal, and we can't get conservative. And honestly, we just got to finish the game strong. And that was kind of like it was a good lesson. And then the second point is we're not even looking at that. We're not even there. We're at practice 7 tomorrow, and our first game is, or whatever you want to call it, is Keystone on Saturday. So I'm not even thinking about that, not even the slightest bit. So just day by day, step by step. So.
Jaden, I have to ask because it's gotten a lot of both social media and other coverage, but what was it like for you guys to watch your former teammate J.J. Lapp catch that touchdown for the L.A. Rams in the preseason game last weekend? I mean, I thought it was really cool, and obviously, but were you guys watching the game together? Did you sort of see what happened after the fact? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was at my house. I was getting ready to go to sleep, so I'm on ESPN, and I'm literally honestly about to tweet like, "Yo, Stetson, throw JJ the ball." As I'm literally firing up a tweet, I see JJ Lapp 47-yard touchdown, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" Like, knew he could do it, but like to see that was pretty special, pretty cool. And I mean, scoring touchdowns in the NFL, how cool is that?
It's something else. I mean, we've been talking with Cole Burgess as well. I hope he's doing well out there in Cincinnati. It's nothing guaranteed in the NFL, that's for sure. But to even get that runway right now is an amazing thing. So best of luck to both of those guys. Let's look at the offensive side of the ball. Zach Boyce. Zach seemed to mature last year before our very eyes as that season went along. He just seemed to get better and better in terms of handling the moment. And a lot of that has to do with your ability to balance the offense with your legs and your fellow running backs back there, obviously, that have assisted. Ashton Capone comes to mind from last year. But tell us about Zach. And feel free to rib him about something because he'll be the first one to rib you guys or us about everything possible. But tell us about Zach Boyce, the quarterback, and Zach Boyce, the guy you hang out with from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, Zach is super special. He just came a very long way. I mean, just to watch his progression is truly awesome. Like his junior year, we knew he had all the mechanics in the world, and he had a great season. I think he had like 30 touchdowns and 10 picks maybe. But like still, that's an amazing season. And we didn't finish that season how we liked, and then to see him come back last season and yes, he has great mechanics and his throwing motion is insane, but to see him like command the offense and like be super intelligent and make less mistakes and honestly just play almost near perfect football, that was really cool to see. And like, yeah, Zach's a good guy. I mean, he's a good dude. He knows, he knows what he wants. He knows how to treat people. And he's a true captain. So it's definitely an honor to play alongside with Zach.
I bet. Well, one of the things I think we learned in the 23 season was just the types of offensive weapons that the Red Dragons bring to the table. And it's funny, I think you guys were sort of underestimated, going down the stretch, and we're certainly underdogs in the Stag Bowl, but you proved yourselves to be champions. You can see that big coach's trophy right over your right shoulder there. You guys earned that in person. You were the better team. But going back to like weapons or secret weapons, are people going into the 24 season maybe not realizing, obviously guys like Lapp and Burgess have left, but you had some other players on the roster who missed season due to injury, or there could be some other newer players stepping up. I mean, are there some other secret weapons that we'll see on the field for the Red Dragons this fall?
There's a lot of secret weapons. Players, personnel. I'm not going to spoil all the news, but we got a lot of players stepping up. We got a lot of new stuff, and it's going to look completely different. But I honestly think we have a chance to be even better than last year on offense. So take that however you want, but I'm very excited about this group.
Jaden, you know enough about Division III football to know that what you guys did last season may have inspired an entire group of teams that thought that peak was unreachable, and that, you know, as somebody had said in the Landmark Media Day when I was hosting it, essentially now they realize from what you guys did, just get to the tournament and who knows what can happen, especially now when we go to the 40-team format this year. It changes everything again. We talked about that in our first preseason show, which you have not seen yet. But I mean, that's going to be an interesting mantra. But to know that you may have changed the entire perception of D3 football in, you know, a 5-week span, but especially that final night where you guys beat North Central in one of the best Division III college football games I've ever attended, period. What does that mean to you? Because I understand, you know, we talked about brushing off the idea of being champs, but do you appreciate, does your team appreciate what you might have done for the entirety of Division III football in that whole stretch?
I mean, I think that's something that, yes, like we kind of understand that, but I think that's something we're going to realize a couple of years down the line, along with actually like winning the national championship and hopefully doing it again this year. We're gonna, like, you realize your success later in life. You don't, because you know, we train ourselves so much to like forget good and bad. So you kind of realize your successes and your failures honestly later in life. So I think it's going to kind of be like that. But I mean, you know, it's football. It's any given Sunday. It's who's ever prepared the most is going to win. Who's ever wants to win is going to win. And, you know, you need a little luck to it. I mean, I'd be a fool if, you know, there was not a little sports luck on our side. And I mean, I was saying something to somebody the other day, and I was like, yeah, we had everything going right for us because, you know, we weren't afraid to lose and, you know, schematically this and that, you know, but we also had a little luck, and climbing the mountain again is going to be like 10 times harder. But that's just so exciting because, like, we get to climb the mountain again and do what we love. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of where my head's at right now. So, yeah.
Well, I guess a question that we have to throw out there, because it's probably come up before. A lot of Division III fans of football and otherwise, you know, AlfanoStJohn is a very unique name, and how did that come to be? How is it like all one word versus, you know, broken up? We're just curious and just having a little fun here with you, but it has been something that we've noticed in the past. We're like, oh, okay, we should just ask him. You tell us the story.
I mean, yeah. So I have I was raised by two moms, and I guess they were indecisive on which last name to pick, so they just put them together and made Alfano, which is one side of my family, and St. John, which is the other side of the family, and they went like that and made AlfanoStJohn. So that's kind of the origin story of that. So I guess me and my twin brother Jesse were the first of our name, which is kind of cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
But that's the origin story, you know. So.
See, I didn't know that. The things we learn here on In the Huddle, sometimes it's amazing, and it's a great story. I would have never even considered that whole thing. Fran didn't tell us that, so we didn't even have advanced knowledge of that part of it. So thank you for sharing that with us. Sure. Jaden, I'm going to see you on September 21st, okay? There's no secret. I don't care what happens in the first 2 weeks of the season. I'm still coming, so I will see you then. We usually don't preview my travels too much in advance, but that one's just circled for us. It's going to be a big game. In our rankings, you guys are 2 and 6, I think it is, number 2 and number 6 our rankings. Others have it a little bit different, obviously. Whatever it is. It's a great game is what it is. And we look forward to seeing what the 2024 version of Cortland is. But before we let you go, you know how this works. If you watched the show before, it's time for shout-outs to any family, friends, teammates, coaches, anybody out there you want to talk with. Jaden, AlfanoStJohn, the floor is yours.
Shout out my family. Shout out Jesse. Shout out CB, 15 on the Bengals. JJ Lapp on the Rams. I guess Coach G and all my other players, but my teammates. Sorry, I'm not coach. I'm very excited to see what Tyson Taylor can do and Kamani. Just remember those two names, Tyson and Kamani. Very excited to see what they can do. So.
Very good.
You might be thinking or acting like a coach because I have a feeling you do get on your fellow teammates like a coach sometimes. From what I hear, you are definitely in on them if they're not doing the right things out there as much as anybody, and that's a testament to the leadership on your team. Jaden, best of luck this season, and we will definitely see you down the road.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks to Coach Fitzpatrick and Fran over at Cortland for helping us get this Jaden AlfanoStJohn interview in the can, as they call it. And, learned a lot about him. I didn't know a lot of the stuff that we talked about there. Appreciate his candor about some of our questions.
I like the. I also like the Game of Thrones reference. I don't know if you caught that, Frank. The first of these
yes,
that was well played.
Yes. Well, will this team repeat? I mean, we've heard about some injuries that may have been coming out of camp that might affect things a little bit. But can Cortland repeat? We kind of touched on it in preseason show number 1. But when you look at the schedule, this is not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. Can they even go 10-0, do you think, this season?
I mean, a part of what I sort of agree with what you just said there, but when I look at week 1 and 2 against Hilbert, and I think it's Lyco, I mean, those teams combined for 3 or 4 wins last season, so not really the toughest schedule out of the gate. Maybe that helps the champs sort of shore up some things, especially if they are replacing some injured players and stuff like that. But yeah, you kind of wonder, is Susquehanna going to be a little more battle tested, or maybe they'll be more beat up after playing Brockport in week 2? It could actually help the Dragons with a little bit of an easier start. But the Empire 8 schedule and then Cortica at the end is always a rough go. So it's going to be challenging for the Dragons to repeat that undefeated season.
Absolutely. Well, they weren't undefeated last season. Don't forget that because they had the Susquehanna loss. But
in the
championship
Empire 8,
season,
they were undefeated.
Yep.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, championship Empire 8 undefeated, right?
There you go. By the way, we just learned as we record this that in fact the landmark, there was controversy last year on which region they would be in. It mattered a little bit more maybe last year than it does with the NPI National Pairwise that we're going to be looking at. But this year, the landmark will remain apparently in Region 2, according to J.P. Williams and Katie Boldvich, the commissioner, just confirming that discussion with him for us.
Okay.
Because we did ask the question. We were confused as to where they would be. So we do have them placed correctly in our slides that they are in Region 2. And again, you look at Susquehanna's schedule. That's a tough one again this year because Brockport's going to be no pushover, then Cortland. And granted, the landmark schedule might not be as strong as the Empire 8 schedule. On the flip side, as we kind of flip the page here with discussion on Cortland, but at the same time, they're going to have some real hurdles early on in the season to clear. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform. Last thought here, the pack. Grove City, Carnegie Mellon, Washington Jefferson, Case Western Reserve,
Case Western,
perhaps somebody I'm not mentioning,
Westminster,
thank you. Who do you see getting through there? Is this Grove City's year again, even with some losses, but they still have Logan Pfeiffer there? Is this Carnegie Mellon, Coach Larson kind of motivating his team with Ben Mills last year at the helm as quarterback? I mean, we hate the fact they don't play out of conference games. We still hate that fact until next year when they open things back up a little bit. But again, JB, it's a tough conference. How do you see that conference going?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we're going to see about half of that conference in the postseason in some form or another because the teams are just so good, and it's pretty clear, sort of, the half full maybe versus the half empty. So I do feel like the championship will come down probably between Grove City, Carnegie Mellon, and W&J, just based on sort of the coaches' preseason poll. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Case Western make a run at it. They've been the PAC champs for many years. And I think that they're looking to kind of get back on top. But with the combination of the ECAC and now the Open Doors Bowl that is going to take one PAC member, you could see two teams make the NCAA playoffs. You could see a team in the Open Doors. You could see a couple teams in the ECA. So you can see like 5 or 6 teams from this conference in the postseason. They are really deep, and I just will be interested from a mathematical perspective, how this new system is going to potentially. I mean, I guess the good news is that the number 2 team in the league theoretically would be 9-1, and that's record should be strong enough the way this kind of cockamamie thing figures it out, that if you have 9 wins, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get into the field of 40. So there could be a team, whether it's Grove City or Carnegie Mellon or W&J, that ends up 9-1, and they could have a run in the playoffs. Maybe, I don't know if it'll be like Cortland, but they could surprise some people.
So that Week 6 game looms large between Grove City at Carnegie Mellon. What's interesting is last year, Grove City started against Westminster. I think it was Westminster, Waynesburg, Washington and Jefferson. Case, then Carnegie Mellon, and then Washington and Jefferson, I think, after that. They flipped the schedule upside down this year so that it's a Week 6 game versus Carnegie Mellon. That's kind of their first opponent of note compared to last year. So they were kind of done after the first half of the season with the toughest of teams. And this year, it's all upside down from that. So Grove City's going to get some, let's say, roll perhaps, or some momentum early on if they do what they're supposed to do against the teams they're playing, and maybe build up and really become a steamroller against some of these larger teams, or the teams that tend to be bigger problems for Grove City year in and year out. We'll see what happens with that. It's an interesting change in schedule, though, ultimately, this season, before they begin to open up into a modified round robin next year. JB, some quick thoughts on other conferences in these regions that we're covering here. First, the CCC. Is anybody beating Endicott?
Probably not. And by the way, it's the CNE now, the Conference of New England, not the CCC.
My bad.
Since the new marketing change. But I would say, the Gulls are the prohibitive favorites, and I think also in the new MAC, you'd have to say that Springfield is likely, expected to bring that one home, although they have to get by some teams like our buddies in Newport, as well as the Merchant Marine, and Catholic's always got their high scoring offense, but elsewhere, in the NCHAC, I mean, Christopher Newport kind of surprised people last year winning that conference. We know that we have some fans out there that really like Salisbury. They have some interesting games in weeks 2 and 3 that could really shape Region 2 in many ways, against Muhlenberg, against a few other teams. So it'll be interesting to see what those Seagulls do. Yeah, Hopkins. I mean, I think that might be a rematch from prior your playoff game kind of a thing. So that's the NJAC could throw a wrinkle in there, and plus you've got these. You got Coach Pelaz with Montclair. They're taking on some other teams this year on their schedule. Rowan is looking to turn things around. So we'll see what happens.
We didn't talk about the MAC much. Is Del Val the team to beat still, even with the new coach? Louis Barrios is back for quarterback, right, this season, I believe?
Yep, he is. And so I think they were picked number 1 in the preseason poll, closely followed, I think, by Kings and maybe Stevenson. But there are teams out there like FDU Florham who only lost by like 3 points or 7 points to a bunch of those teams that finished above them. So who knows? Maybe the Devils can make a run at it. We'll have to wait and see.
And, you talked about the ECFC. That's just a crapshoot with what's left in there at this point. Somebody's going to kind of default into a playoff spot that they might not have otherwise earned. But, hey, more power to you at that point.
to be fair, the Alfred State Pioneers really acquitted themselves pretty well.
Versus Mount
they
Union.
put up some points against Mount Union that no one saw coming. I mean, hey, good for them.
I'll give you that.
Lose 70-0 like some,
Yeah, it took it went to 28 to whatever early, and just kind of stayed there for a while to like a tune of 28-14, I want to say, or something along those lines. It stayed way too close for way too long, and maybe foretold what would happen next week versus Alma, as Alma comes and beats them in that game. But I think MASCAC, the Wolves, in their farewell season now to the MASCAC, do they take the hardware with them?
Yeah. They might. I mean, Framingham has been down the last couple of years, but UMass Dartmouth is, it's funny. There was, once again, one of these weird tiebreaker situations where there was 3 co-champions in that league, and it just happened that the Wolves got the NCAA bid. And so I know that, our friend Dante out in Dartmouth is going to be, this is his last year. He's going to want to get that extra ring and make a playoff push. I mean, he had a taste of it against Ithaca a couple of years ago, and, we'll see.
Dante Aviles Santos, good name drop for us to just about end on here. We talked about the Liberty League. We talked about the Empire 8 briefly, and there's a lot of good football to be played in Regions 1 and 2, which are honestly some of the largest regions. We won't talk about the NESCAC until we're a little bit closer to their season actually starting, which does not happen right away here, as folks know. But
Week 2.
We'll talk more NESCAC at another point in time. Final thoughts on Regions 1 and 2, my friend.
Well, it's interesting to finally go into a season where, the national champion comes from Region 2. It hasn't happened in 32 years. I think there's still a lot of D3 football fans that don't believe that actually happened, and that some team from Ohio, Wisconsin, or Texas or Minnesota should be the defending national champs. But it does open up this sort of possibility that anything is possible now, and I think that's exciting and good for Division III football. We've had some great games that we've covered over the years, and we're expecting to see a whole lot more coming up in 24.
Next shows will be dropped on Saturday for Regions 3 and 4, and Tuesday for Regions 5 and 6. More interviews with players throughout those. We'll do the same review of key games in Week 1 and then key games for the rest of the season in those regions. So come and watch us again if you have any interest in those regions. They'll lead us up toward kickoff 5 p.m. At RPI versus La Crosse. A pregame show that will start around 4 o'clock that afternoon, live from RPI if we can pull off the technology, which we're going to be checking into on Friday to make sure we're going to be good to go.
Frank is going to have to buy a mile of Ethernet cable.
Lord knows I wouldn't be able to hang from that. Yeah, I mean, seriously. Skyscraper's worth of Ethernet cable. We'll see how that works. No, we'll see how it goes, but we'll announce officially what we're doing, where we'll be, and what you can watch as a result of it as we get closer to next week. So, folks, for now, thanks for joining us on our second preseason show of Season 17, and we will see you on Saturday.